All right, hey everybody, it's great to have you here on cleaninghustle.com. I'm super excited. This is going to be a super exciting episode. I've got my friend here. I'll introduce him in just a second. Him and I have known each other for a couple of days.
Yeah, a few days.
So we're up here in beautiful Durango, Colorado, and I thought I would come to you guys and kind of tell you the beginning of my story. And this gentleman right here, his name is Blu Harris.
Nice to meet you.
He's got a big part of my story, and so we're just going to sit and have a little fireside chat. Believe it or not, we actually have a fireplace. We decided not to light it because I didn't want to clean up the mess. So anyway, thank you for checking in, and we'll just kind of start chatting. So tell me about the first building you ever cleaned in the janitorial business.
That would have been BDC, and that was actually with you and your father.
Okay.
That was my first experience with cleaning, and I was 18 and you were like 14 at the time.
Yeah.
And that was my first experience at cleaning.
And so those of you that don't know my story, I actually got started cleaning at age 12. The account that he was referring to was a beverage distributing company in Aurora, Colorado. And it was actually a 42,000 square foot building that my dad ended up cleaning for, I think, close to 26 years.
Yeah, something like that.
And then you ended up taking it over after that and had it for how many more years after that?
I think I had it probably for 8-10 years.
Yeah, so nearly a 35-year account.
Yeah, long time.
So it's really a testament to what this business is and what you can do inside of this business, right?
Yeah, if you put you put your mind to it and do it right, it can last a long time for you. I think that's a big mistake some big companies do, is they don't pay attention to little details and they don't get an account that lasts 30 years. But you can get an account to last 30 years if you take care of it.
As we know in our industry, the average account lasts about 18 months.
Yeah.
So to be able to hold an account for 30 years, and really that account is my life story in janitorial. Like all of my basis of my stories that a lot of my learning how to clean and what I used to do early on was really a big part of that one particular account. Mm-hmm. And I learned to vacuum in that account back in the days before. Were you around when, I guess it was maybe around the same time when the backpack vacuum cleaner was invented?
I started cleaning with you when you had this weird little triangular shaped one. It made this loud whistle noise the whole time.
It was terrible. Was it a Holman Holt? Holman something, yeah. Pullman Holt? I don't remember.
The whole time it ran, it whistled, and it was pretty funny. And then he actually moved up to the actual cleaning coach, or not, it wasn't cleaning coach, it was
the Pro Team.
And it was and you had the coach.
Yeah,
the big coach, and
we had what was that guy's name? Jerry Diamond. He was one of the first distributors in Denver when they were still selling them out of the trunk of their cars.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. We'll get into that in a little bit. So, you know me more on a personal level. You and I have been best friends for, well, really since I was 14 years old. I think we met each other in 1987.
Yep, 1987.
Yeah.
It was funny because I was hanging out with somebody in my hometown of Fort Lupton, Colorado, and they were actually friends with him, and they saw him across the street. Hey Dan, and he just kind of like acted like he didn't know and kind of went off the other direction, and we're like, wow, that guy's kind of rude.
A stuck-up snob or what?
Come to find out, he was just really shy. If you know Dan and you think Dan's shy, yeah, Dan was shy at 14.
Yeah, I'm actually an introvert, so it's not surprising.
But then we got to meet up at another time and start to talking and just hit it off. Two peas in a pod. Been best friends ever since. Matter of fact, I don't even consider him a friend. He's my brother.
Yep.
And
unfortunately, we don't get to see each other that often. A couple times a year, right?
Yeah, a couple times a year. Through thick and thin, cleaning terrible buildings, not getting paid. Cleaning terrible buildings and getting paid. We've been through a lot together. It's been a lot of fun.
So tell me off the top of your head your favorite story out of janitorial, you and I hanging out, cleaning buildings. What's your, just the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about us, you and me cleaning buildings?
Well, should we share these stories? Because we're going to give people ideas of bad things.
Well, let's just put in a discllaimer right here that says that most of the things that I did early on in my cleaning career, I would fire myself for. So, those are I look back and I'm like, man, I was the worst employee in the world. I would immediately fire myself for some of the stuff we pulled when we were cleaning buildings back then. But most of the buildings we used to clean are either out of business or changed management because it's 30 years removed, right?
Yeah, so nobody can come back at us.
Yeah, so we should be okay as long as, maybe. All right, another disclaimer to my current customers. No, we have very strict policies on most of this. So, with all that being said, go ahead.
Well, keep in mind, we were young and stupid. And yes, we would fire each other right now if we had an employee that did that same thing. But I was 20 at the time, and I was 19, 20 years old when we were doing some of this stuff, and you were 4 years younger than that. So
I was 16-ish when I went full time into janitorial.
Yeah, his first cleaning business was Dove carpet cleaning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that. Getting my first bank account, Dove carpet cleaning. Yep.
Buying himself a sports car. He was like Mr. Cool.
The mullet,
and
Dove carpet cleaning.
Yeah, but I think one of my favorite stories is when we were cleaning this printing press area. The name shall be removed.
And this printing press was what, 300,000 square feet?
It was huge.
It was back in the day they used to do the web presses. So it was they actually printed the TV guide.
Yeah, it was a TV guide. Believe it or not, there used to be a TV guide that would come to you in the mail.
And I actually still have the very last one that came off the press.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they saran wrapped it and gave it to me as a kind of a closing down gift for being the best janitor they ever had.
If they knew this story, they might not have given it to you.
Yeah, so okay, go ahead and tell the story.
But for part of the printing, they would have these big aluminum plates about the thickness of a pop can, and they would just have it to go and
that's a Coke can in Texas.
Yeah, Coke can, pop can. But they would just send them off to be recycled. So we took a couple of these, were like in the recycle, that were like big sheets. I mean, we're talking.
They had to be 2 foot by 4 foot or bigger than that. You think?
2x3 or 2x4, something like that. They're huge.
Yeah, they were big old sheets of aluminum.
And we got this great idea and said, hey, we could make a paper airplane out of this. So we sat there and we bent it over and folded it over and made a paper airplane out of these things. We had several of them. And they were heavy, but they were huge. So we get out there first of all inside the shop area and chucked them, and they flew pretty good. So then we went outside because we needed some more room to really, and it was like, making big, huge loops in the air and just goofing off, having fun. And all of a sudden we look over and realize the sun is starting to crest. And we look and we're like, dang, they're going to be here in like 45 minutes. So we haven't done jack.
Yeah, we didn't even got the trash can there, right?
So we like scramble, I'm throwing trash, she's running the floor sweeper, the dust mop. So we're dust mopping and trashing at the same time, throwing, cleaning the bat, and we got it done just as people are coming in. And how in the world we did that much cleaning in that much time, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was. We ended up cleaning when people were there, I think, but I think we ended up cleaning about 300,000 square feet in an hour and a half.
Yeah, about an hour and a half.
Yeah, we were chucking, cruising it was like, that was nuts.
Yeah.
So, well, we've known each other a long time in the business.
Mm-hmm.
You've kind of taken a different path than I did.
Yeah.
You're in the handyman business, so shout out to Bayfield Handyman Services. If you're in the Bayfield, Colorado, we'll let you be the official sponsor of this video.
Yeah,
so if you want to give everybody your phone number, we can have them call you.
Yeah, if you're in the Bayfield, Durango, Four Corners area, it is 970-403-9234.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a father-son business.
Yeah. And he does great work. He's always had a very, very high level of workmanship and takes very, very big pride in his work. Even when we were in the janitorial business, together and working together.
Yeah. Once we got past being stupid and young,
Very immature.
Yeah, immature.
So what was the first? Tell me about the process. You got your very first janitorial account that you got on your own. You went in, you did the sales process. You went from A to Z. Tell me what you remember about that process and how you landed your first contract. I know this is like 30 years ago, but tell me about that entrepreneurial experience of when you landed that first contract. Was it I-70 Exec Center? Was that the first one?
I-70 Exec Center. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about that process and how all that worked out for you.
Yeah, and it was brand new for me to go from actually doing the grunt cleaning, the hard, the out there showing up every day, dumping trash, working for other people as a subcontractor. And I got wind from somebody that I-70 Exec Center was not happy with their cleaner. So I found a phone number, called the guy, scared out of my mind. I'm like,
so you did a cold call, right?
Cold call. I just got word from somebody that they weren't happy with their cleaner. So I tracked down the phone number, called the guy and said, hey, I'm Travis Harris. At that point I was going by Travis. So everybody knows me by Blue is my middle name. So Just got this business. I think it was HD&I cleaning service.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, saved, delivered, and healed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's it's
SDH cleaning?
Yeah, SDH cleaning.
Saved, delivered, healed.
Yeah, something like that. It was a long time ago. So I got that, and I called him up and just say, hey, I'm just calling to see if you're interested in getting a bid for your cleaning services. And he said yes. So man, my heart, the whole time I'm on the phone, this is my cold call. I don't know. My heart's just bum, 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 bum. So he says yes. I'm like, oh, you know. So then set the appointment.
This was long before we had any process figured out. We didn't have, even putting a bid proposal together was.
Yeah, it was scary.
And that was back before the computer was invented. Did we have to handwrite the proposal?
Yeah, well, I had to take a stone tablet and a chisel.
Right. Moses was your cohort.
I actually had a computer. It was an Apple IIc. Apple IIc.
I didn't know you had an Apple back then.
Yeah, it was an old Apple. It was an Apple IIe or Apple II. It was the thin one, not the big one. And I got a hold of a printer. But I called up Dan and said, hey, Dan, help, man. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And we talked it over and got some advice from other people. And I came up with a price per square foot kind of thing. And I went in there, put on a shirt and tie, sat in the guy's room, tried not to look scared out of my mind, even though I was scared out of my mind. And we walked around the place and put together a bid proposal and got the job. Had that account for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we ended up, it was more of your deal at that point. I wasn't really involved in the heavy lifting of the sales piece of it back then. I was more of the grunt worker. So, but as you developed that relationship, there was a tenant that moved in that you ended up actually using that relationship to bounce from that tenant and actually get another account, right? Was that the Promise Keepers?
Yeah, Promise Keepers. I got the Promise Keepers building, and I did that one.
Because they had outgrown their space in that building and then moved to a new building. And so, part of the sales process is really, obviously doing a good job for your customer. And then if you're in a multi-tenant space like a lot of our current buildings are, then, you develop those relationships and those springboard off to other relationships and other opportunities. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of work those two together, which kind of goes back to the whole point of earlier. We were talking about that 30-year-old contract and the value of keeping those customers happy for a long period of time, because you never know what opportunity is going to bring another opportunity, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the big keys on that is listening. You got to hear them. Even if they say something you don't agree with, listen, because there's something in there that you need to hear. That's going to, you need to listen to that and not let your pride get in the way. And make some changes and make some adjustments and find out what people want to see, because they'll tell you what they want if you just listen. As long as you listen and you do what they want, you keep them happy. So, and then you're ready to step on. Somebody else wants to move on. You say, hey, this guy's great.
So what advice would you give to somebody that has no money? They think the janitorial business, and one of the beauties of our industry is the fact of the low cost of entry. But what would be the one nugget that you would give to someone, say a single mom that's trying to start the janitorial business and she's scared out of her mind like you were back then? What would be that one piece of advice that you would give that person?
I'd say, it is one of the best businesses to get started with low capital. Get yourself a trash can, mop bucket, vacuum cleaner, and you don't even have to get a fancy backpack.
You could build your own, right?
Yeah, you could build your own. I did that. I didn't have 2 cents to rub together, so I just took a couple old pieces of crap vacuums and built a backpack out of it. But the big thing is to swallow your fear and just make that phone call. That's it. Just make that phone call. Nowadays, there's so much different from in marketing and all this other stuff. But put all that aside and just make that cold call. Take that bravery of picking up the phone and saying, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. Can I give you a bid? And you're going to get a bunch of no's. I got lucky the first one I called because I already knew I had an in that they needed somebody.
You kind of had a referral. So referrals are good because you have a sort of pre-qualified lead. You still have to do the legwork and make the phone call. You still have to stop and pick up the phone and get a hold of that person. But you did that. You got in there and and how big was that account? Do you remember? Was it
40,000 square feet?
Was it 40? Okay.
No,
I had it in my head it was more like 70, but maybe was it 35,000 a floor or 40,000 a floor?
I think it was 40,000 altogether, but then we got the other building he had, and that was another 40, so it wound up being
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. Yeah.
Because we wound up taking another building that he had, that same guy was managing by doing a good job. But that's my advice is just to get over that fear, pick up the phone, make a call, and that cold call is where it starts. You don't have to have all the fancy stuff. You don't have to, start a Facebook page. Is all you need to really do, and just make some phone calls. And they say there's one yes for 100 no's, and you can't let the no's bother you. All you got to do is let them get in front of them, put together a bid, and when you're doing your bid and you're talking to them, I think a big mistake a lot of people make when they're doing a sell is they're thinking in their mind of what they want to convey to this person they're trying to sell the account to. But the big thing that helped me, I used to do sales for him, and I had a great closing rate, but the big thing that helps with that is if you listen, like I said before, you can know what they want, and then you can structure your bid to be what they want. And if you're thinking so much about what you want to tell them, you won't listen. So you just got to put all that aside and listen, and then put together a bid that answers their concerns, and you're in.
Yeah. I told you about the first biggest contract I ever sold was $100,000 a year.
Yeah, that's big.
And the guy, I literally talked to the guy for 2 hours, and not one time in that 2 hours did we talk about janitorial.
You build a rapport.
All I did was sit there and listen. Like I literally just sat in his office. He was telling me about his struggles in his production and his workers and just every other thing. And we got to the end of the conversation, and he said, "Hey, my budget's $100,000 a year. I like you. If you can put something together, then I'm going to go with you guys." I didn't have to tell him about my resume. I didn't have to tell him about what services we offer. I think I might have handed him a brochure, but I spent the entire time listening. And listening, it comes down to, we're in the relationship business.
Yeah.
Janitorial is the relationship business. And so when you're building these relationships, I think what happens with sales guys is that they want to get in, they want to try to close the sale, they want to close that sale and move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. And the reality of it is we're in a relationship business. And so I tell customers, as I'm listening, as you said, I tell them, we're an extension of who you are. We're an extension of your management team. We're an extension of your organization. And so this is a joint partnership relationship that we plan on having for a very, very long time. And so I think you're right on point. That's one of the biggest mistakes that they make in sales is that they just want to get the sale. And so they're like a blubbering idiot, just talking, instead of taking those few moments to really stop and listen and hear what the customer's needs are. Because if you just pause, I had a sales guy years ago, and he would talk nonstop. Like he wouldn't, even in a normal conversation, he wouldn't let you have a word in edgewise. Mm-hmm. And I started to train him on what I called at the time awkward silence. Mm-hmm. And so I would say, okay, his name was Don. I would say, Don, we're gonna sit here, and I want you to focus on awkward silence. Mm-hmm. Because because as a rule of thumb, humans don't like silence. Mm-hmm. Like if I just sit here quietly, it makes them feel uncomfortable, and so they feel like they need to talk. And through that process, they're going to tell you what you need to know without asking questions. And so the ability to be able to just stop and create that awkward silence and allow them to talk, they're going to tell you all the defaults with their current company. They're going to tell you their pet peeves. They're basically going to walk you right into the sale, but you have to have the ability to stop and let them talk and allow those moments of awkward silence. Because as a rule of thumb, as humans, we don't like awkward silence. It's just not something that we're innately wired to handle. Mm-hmm. And so it took him a long time, but he finally developed that skill, and I saw his sales start to increase because then he got the proper information to be able to write the proper bid proposal, to be able to, because if you give somebody a cookie cutter bid off of a template, mm-hmm. and then they're like, well, this isn't even anything I said I wanted. Like, mm-hmm. well, I thought you asked for a 1 day a week service, but you really need a 2. So the key there is listen, give the customer what they're asking for. Don't try to upsell them right out of the gate. I teach my team, I say, we're going to give them what they're asking for, and then if there needs to be an upsell, like we get into the building and we're like, hey, this building needs to be cleaned 5 days a week, not 3 days a week. Then we'll go back to the customer and upsell them once they've become a customer. What happens is sales guys get in this groove and they're like, wow, your building's really dirty. What do you mean you're only getting cleaned once a week? You really should do 2. And they're so focused on trying to upsell that they end up losing the customer.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to just give the customer what they're asking for and really listening. So that's a really good point.
If you push on the upsell, they feel like they're being hustled.
Yep.
And then their defenses go up. When their defenses are up, your sale's done.
Yeah.
You know?
And the dynamics of the world that we live in, right now you can shop for a car. You can get that car, you can get all the options you want and know when you get to the dealership what the price is going to be, what the car is, and then they try to upsell you and you immediately get defensive because you're like, no, I don't want that extended warranty. No, I don't want this whatever. And then they end up losing the sale because they just didn't give you what you asked for. Yeah. So that's a big mistake that I think a lot of people make out in the field. And especially early on in business, because you finally have that person captive, like you did at I-70 Exec Center. You finally have that person captive and you're like, man, I have to capture this sale because this may be the only opportunity that I get for a while. And so they almost get inside their own head or whatever and they end up killing the deal. And, in your case, you obviously got the customer, so that was good, but that's not the case all the time.
Yeah.
And so they end up killing the deal because they got inside their own head and they think, oh, this is the only one I'm ever going to get. And so it's important to, treat everybody professionally, but spend that time really listening to what they have and then put your best foot forward from a professional level.
Definitely. And, and along that same line with that, if they feel like they're being heard, people want to know that they're being heard. And subconsciously, if they feel like you actually care what they're having to say, they're going to be interested in sitting down with you when you're done with the proposal. If they feel like you're not listening to them, then there's going to be, when you're done with the proposal, leave it at the front desk and I'll get back with you. And you don't want that. You want to be able to, but if they feel like, hey, you actually care what I'm having to say, then they're going to want to actually sit down in the office when you hand in the bid, which is what you want. You don't want to just be the stack. You don't want to be added to the stack of other bids.
Right.
You want them to sit down in the office. Hey, how you doing? And be glad to see you. A little trick is that people like to know they're being heard, like that you care about them. And then if you listen, like we were talking about before, and you have your bid made to justify their things, like say, I have had this before where they're like, their concern is like, I just don't feel like the dusting is being done regularly. It's like, I can't tell when are they going to dust, what's it going to dust. So dusting is an issue. So when I didn't have to change my bid any, but I'm listening, I'm understanding, and he knows I'm listening because when we go to hand back the bid and I'm going over the what do we used to call those? Scope of work. And I show in here, and dusting, it looks, I've got you set up here to be dusted on the 3rd and the 5th, whatever, I guess, so they know this is what they're expecting. And it's like, oh, you listened. You're going to have, it's a set schedule. I know what I'm expecting. And they feel it, and at that point, you're not selling on price. Everybody has this problem. Sometimes they want to sell the best price, the best deal. But no, I was never the cheapest. I can't say never, but 9 times out of 10, I was not the cheapest. I wasn't, I wasn't even close to the bottom. I was upper to the upper end on the pricing. But we got closers. We were closing on about 90%. And but they'll go with you because hey, you listen. They're going to get what they want.
And the beauty of that is that you're giving them something that they're already paying for, probably with their current service. Mm-hmm. But all you're doing at that point is attaching a schedule to it. So now they see the value in what they're paying, and so you're charging them more for something that they should have already been getting with their current. But you take the time to actually map out a schedule and say, I do this with some of our larger clients where we have to stagger out dusting throughout the week. And we'll say, we'll actually take a floor plan of their building and we'll say, okay, this section is Monday, this is Tuesday, this is Wednesday, this is Thursday, and then on the weekend we'll finish up whatever we didn't get throughout the week. And that also helps too with the operations team when they go in to see the building. If they go in on a Wednesday morning, they know they can look at the Tuesday night dusting schedule and go right to that area and make sure that the team and the crew is following that schedule. So
that communication transfers over to the operations guy. That's how you keep an account for 30 years. They know that, hey, the operations guy now knows, hey, this is an issue. We're looking at it. We're making sure, and they're on it. And that same information is transferred on, and he carries on that conversation, that relationship.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to our childhood. We gave them some great pointers on sales and even a little bit of operations, but let's talk about our childhood. And so, as most people know, like I said, I grew up in the business from age 12. I really got full-time into it at age 16.
Yeah.
So just walk me through kind of what you know about me and the business and your, maybe just kind of talk about what you've seen from the outside looking in on what I've been able to accomplish over the last few years. And then, that way that'll help some people that are, because sometimes it's hard for me to tell the story because I'm just telling it from my own perspective. But I think it would be great for the audience to kind of see you from the outside looking in. Mm-hmm. And watching your brother build a multi-million-dollar janitorial business with, really, I'm not that smart, so I think if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah, don't let him fool you. This guy is brilliant. But it's like I said, the first cleaning business he had was Dove Carpet Cleaning. And, he was basically working as a subcontractor, running around cleaning janitorial accounts, carpet cleaning, and doing quite well for himself. And he was always had that go-getter personality. But the one thing I know about Dan is that he finds out what he needs to know and he goes out and learns it. He doesn't just, get arrogant and think, I just know everything. He grabs a book, he reads a book, he studies, he figures it out. And he did a lot of cleaning for a long time, and he always had this heart of wanting to be a pilot. So while he was cleaning what would be a full-time job cleaning, he went to school, full-time job school, to become a pilot, to not just a private pilot, but his goal was to become an airline pilot. So he went through an actual college in Colorado Springs and came out of there with a associate's degree in aviation science. And I started working towards becoming an airline pilot and still doing some janitorial on the side to make ends meet. Because when you start out in flying, a lot of people may not know.
You guys think janitorial is bad? My first year as a flight instructor, I made less than $90,000 for the entire year.
Yeah, unless you're flying a big heavy.
Talk about paying your dues. That's a tough world to pay your dues in.
Yeah, because to be an airline pilot, you have to have so many hours and so much time, and you have to work your way up there, being first of all a flight instructor making nothing. And then you're a freight dog, and they call it, you're hauling freight. They call it freight dog because you're worthless.
They made you fly through thunderstorms.
But there's a thunderstorm. I don't care. Fly it, and so he was working his way through that. Came out with all of his ratings as a commercial pilot and everything like that, and worked his way up to becoming a freight pilot. And he's flying freight. He's so brilliant with understanding what needs to be done and learning a process and a routine. That's something he's good with. He'll find the process, the routine, and the setup to make success. They saw that where he was working, then pretty soon they made him in charge of all the pilot training for the freight. So he's flying that, and he's realizing he's taking something he loves, aviation, and turning it into a job. That was so great.
Yep.
And he thought,
that was the biggest piece is it became a job.
Became a job. It's no longer fun anymore. So he decided, I'm going to go back into the cleaning business. Meanwhile, I've still been in the cleaning business the whole time. He left me to do this other, and I'm still out there.
I did kind of
cleaning toilets.
That wasn't very nice of me.
Actually, one of the things you were doing while you were going to school was still vacuuming some of my buildings.
Oh yeah.
But so he decides he's going to leave that and start fresh, start a brand new janitorial business down in Texas, from zero, nothing, broke. I mean, at one point your car broke down on the side of the road and you just walked away from it because it wasn't worth it wasn't worth paying the tow money to go have it fixed. So he's in the middle of the road out in Texas. His car dies. He gets out of the car and just walks to town, never to see the car again.
Yep.
Took me one.
I walked across the street and cleaned one of my buildings.
Cleaned a building and then walked home. And then he, so he just worked his way, clawing, scratching at the dirt, making his way through. And that's something I want to let everybody know, that if you working under Dan, sometimes you can work and there's a white shirt or a white collar guy running the show. He doesn't know what you've been through. Doesn't know, doesn't care, just get it done. This guy, he has been there when you have already scheduled to do an extra bit of maybe buffing a floor on a Wednesday night. And you get there and you get that, so you've got an extra long night, and then you get there and find out they had a party in the cafeteria and they left it a disaster, and then you go to the bathroom and somebody has done something unspeakable and ungodly to the bathroom, and you still got to get all this stuff done, and you're going like, but I was already tight for time, and now I'm like, in that stress. And he's also been the guy that's scared to death in the meeting with because somebody has a complaint and you got to go deal with it, you know.
Or avoided the phone call.
Avoided the phone call because you're scared.
Yep.
Or been the guy that's putting together a bid proposal, thinking like, "Man, I got to get this bid. This is I'm eating beans and rice. I need to get this bid." Handing in the bid and being calm. So he's been through it all, and been the highs and the lows. So he knows what it is. He knows what it's been through, and he started that business and ran it up pretty good. I mean, and at one point he opened a branch in Colorado, and I became his regional manager in Colorado. I started as a sales guy and then became your manager. And then they closed that down.
That pretty quick, right?
Yeah,
I think we like 6 months. Back then we were still trying to figure out what we were doing.
Yeah.
But I think even with minimal skills, we grew it from like $0 to $12,000 a month in like 6 months, right?
Yep, 6 months.
So yeah.
So then moved down to Texas and became vice president for him, and did that for a lot of time. And it ups and downs, people cheating him out, doing some things that weren't cool to him having successes, him having failures. He's learned from everything, and that's one of the great things about Dan too, is when he learns from everything, whether it's a good or a bad that's happened, he learns from it, applies what he learns, moves forward. And now he's growing this company to the size it is now. So if you're working for Dan, you don't have to feel like, oh, he doesn't know what it's really like. No, he knows more than you think. He knows it all. From 12 years old, dumping trash at 12 years old, which don't ever do that.
Yeah, we can't do that now.
Can't do that now. It was okay back then. It's not okay now. There's a lot of things we did back in the 80s.
That was back when you rode in the back windshield of your car and you didn't wear a seatbelt. So, things have changed a little bit since back then.
If you wore a bicycle helmet, you'd have been laughed at.
Now you have to wear one.
Right? Now you have to wear a bicycle helmet.
I still barely wear one, but that's another subject.
Yeah, it's like I went from being like, somebody wore a bicycle helmet and we'd have laughed at him and maybe beat him up, to where it's like your kids go out there and just get a bicycle helmet.
So you've owned multiple businesses over the years, and what do you think as a business owner has been your number one struggle? If you were looking at your whole entire career path over the years, what do you think you personally, if you could share a nugget with everybody that's watching, what would be the one thing that, like, if you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self and say, what would you tell yourself back then?
I think my biggest struggle, and I think as I would tell my 20-year-old self, is not to let fear get in the way. Fear cripples, and that, I think so many times we let fear keep us from making that phone call. Fear keeps us from returning that phone call. It's like, oh, this guy's he's gonna do a complaint. I mean, I look at this like I'm looking at a pager. That's how it was back then. You look at the pager. You got the pager number, and it's like, dang, that's the manager at the building. That's the.
And what do you think the biggest fear in that moment? I know for me in that moment, it's not even really about the complaint. It's always the level of catastrophizing. Like you go from, it could be a happy customer, and I even see it in my office today where you've had no complaints with this customer for 6 months, and then all of a sudden you get back in the day, a page or the phone call, you automatically escalate to,
your head.
They're going to cancel the contract, I'm getting a 30-day notice, whatever. It automatically goes from here to here. And how many times have we made those phone calls and it doesn't end up being that? Now, I have had plenty of them where they're like, you guys suck, we're firing you.
Yeah, you yell at you on the phone. I've had those yell at you on the phones. 9 times out of 10, it's, hey, while you're here tonight, I got this extra thing that needs to be done. Okay, extra thing. Good, that's extra bill.
Good, or carpet cleaning. Great, I get to write up a work order and make some more money.
Exactly. And it reminds me that I heard this later in life, and I wish I could have told my 20-year-old self this, because that fear cripples you from doing things. But this guy, he was managing a building out here, and he said, a problem is an opportunity. So it's like a problem is an opportunity. If your client or your customer has a problem, that's an opportunity for you to fulfill that problem and become better.
Yep.
And to look better in their eyes. Because even if they have a negative, they're like, hey man, I don't think you've been dusting the shelf. Now that's a negative, but if you take it and not be defensive, it's like, oh, I'm sorry about that, sir. No excuses. I'll make sure that's taken care of. And you actually take care of their needs. They feel listened to, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
It's a continuation of the relationship that you established in the mid. You know, we always say that money is made when problems are solved.
Yeah.
And so for anybody, whether you're in the janitorial business, whether you're in the handyman business, the idea is to figure out where are their problems and then solve those problems, and then that translates into making money.
Yeah.
And so finding problems and solving problems where you lose a customer is where you stop continuing to solve their problems.
Yeah.
Or you don't fix a recurring issue that continues to happen over and over again, and the customer's like, well, I got to change you out because you guys obviously don't have the capacity to fix the problem.
Yeah, because it actually winds up being a positive if you say there's an issue and you don't get defensive. You just like, oh, we'll take care of that, and you take care of it. He feels like, hey man, the last 3 janitorial services I've had, I complain about something and it doesn't get taken care of, and it just builds this anger. But if he says, hey, I bring a concern, and he takes care of it, he feels listened to.
Yeah.
You know, he or she feels like you actually heard what they had to say, and they feel like, hey, it makes them feel like I've got a good cleaner, because now if I have any problem, they're going to take care of it. Because nobody's perfect, and they know that. But if you blow them off,
Especially in the janitorial business.
yeah, if you're afraid to return that call.
So back to your biggest fear, is there something that you had fear in your life about that you didn't act on because you let fear overtake you, that you look back and you're like, wow, I really wish I would have done that because that could have changed the trajectory of. Is there anything off the top of your head that you can think of that may have been something that you let fear overtake you?
You know, I think being completely honest, open, which is, you know, it's a scary thing to do. I let fear of failure because I felt overwhelmed when I went from being sales. I was up to vice president in your company, and it was less than 6 months. I went from doing sales to had salesmen underneath me. I was firing salesmen, hiring salesmen, dealing with operations guys, and that fear. And I was tired. It's hard work. This guy puts in some hours. You try and keep up with him, he'll run you in the ground.
Good luck.
You won't keep up with him in the office. But that fear kind of made me bow out too quick. I mean, I wasn't doing anything wrong. Whether the work was, we had a 90% close rate. It was actually greater than 90% close rate. But I was constantly in this fear that I wasn't going to do good enough. So I bowed out sooner, and I think to myself, if I hadn't have done that, who knows where I'd be in your company right now? Because that was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
What was it? 20? It was 2006.
Yeah, 2006. So
2006.
18 years ago. Yeah.
18 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think that's something I look back and regret.
Well, good. Do you have any closing thoughts? Any last words of wisdom you want to give to anybody that's maybe just starting out in the janitorial business, or maybe they've reached a plateau? In any business, especially in janitorial, you'll reach plateaus. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really good example of when you reach a certain plateau in the business, don't bow out, push through. Mm-hmm. And if you need mentors, and I think probably 20 years ago, the difference between what we have today and what we didn't have back then was we didn't have technology. And what technology does, like on Cleaning Hustle here, is that now we can just jump on YouTube, we can get a word of encouragement, we can find a mentor, we can get to that next level. Yeah. And so I think if I was giving your 20-year-old self some advice, which I was pretty ignorant back then, I didn't know how to deal with certain things either. We all learn and grow, but I think what I would have said to myself and to you back then would be to find a mentor, find somebody that's been there, done that, that's walked that road, and they're maybe a few steps ahead of you, and really sink yourself into that person, and then adhere. I think kind of the theme of what this whole podcast has been about is listening. Yeah. And it's listening, whether it's listening to your customer and following through that whole entire sales process to where they become a customer. Mm-hmm. And then once they become a customer and you get a whole lot of customers and then you plateau, then you find a mentor, and then you let that mentor kind of help you push that lid We talk a lot about the law of the lid because we follow Maxwell, and the lid is, your abilities of where you're at. And the only way to get past that lid is to educate yourself above the lid.
Yeah.
And so that's where mentors come into play. That's where training comes into play, all of those things. So, we're in a day and age, the beauty of the day and age that we're in is that there is every resource out there for you to become a better business person and to be able to push the envelope and get to the next level and to work through some of those things that we didn't have the tools to work through back then, because we might be in a different place today if we had the tools we have now to be able to work through some of those things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's my advice to anybody is don't let fear hold you back. Fear is a liar. There's a song about that. I can't quote the song right now, but fear is a liar. Most of the time, that fear that this is going to be a terrible phone call, it's a lie. The fear that you can't do it, that fear of failure, it's a lie. You can do it. And take some advice from here, Dan. It's like he found any kind of a shortcoming in himself, he found a book, he found a mentor, he found something to educate himself. Didn't take that as, that's the end of where I can go with this. He's like, hey, I need to get better at sales. He read books. He studied, and he became a master of what he needed to do. And I think that's, if I could tell my 20-year-old self that, what I tell myself is, don't let fear bother you. It's like something I heard the other day from a guy I was talking about painting actually. He said, if you're living in depression, if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. A lot of times that's what we do. We're sitting there worried about what this phone call is going to be. We're living in the future. I'm anxious.
Isn't that worry like the evil stepsister of fear?
Yeah, it's right there. It's that fear and that worry. But if you're at peace, you're in the moment. And if you have that peace, the phone call rings, hey, I'm at peace. I'm in the moment. I answer the guy saying, I'm going to answer his questions. I'm going to answer her questions. What is it they have? Maybe it's a good thing. It might not be a bad thing. Or, the fear of even, I think a lot of people just getting started, that fear of actually going to the guy's office and sitting there and saying, hey, can I clean your building?
And what is that fear anyway? It's fear of rejection. They're going to tell you no, right? But
Yeah.
if you didn't try, you already got a no. So why not try?
Exactly.
Right.
So that's my big thing. Forget fear.
All right. So our takeaways from today are listen and don't walk in fear.
Yeah.
And find resources that you need to help you push to the next level.
Yeah, like you said, there's resources everywhere nowadays.
Yep.
And if you're working for Dan, talk to him.
Yep.
He'll get you set up in the right place to go.
Yep.
You've been there. You know what it is. So.
Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Again, go to cleaninghustle.com if you're catching this video on YouTube. And back to what we were saying earlier is we have a ton of resources. We have training material to help you push that next level. We're also going to offer coaching and mentoring. So go to cleaninghustle.com, fill out the form. One of my staff members will reach out to you and will help you push your cleaning business to the next level. Thank you again for watching, and Blu, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, thank you.